Gretchen Eleanor Harrington, A Tragedy in a Quiet Town. Gretchen Eleanor Harrington was born on June 13, 1967, in Marple Township, Pennsylvania, a small, quiet suburb considered an ideal place to raise children. Her family was a shining example of warmth and connection. Her parents, Reverend Harold Boyd Harrington and Ina Cover Harrington, placed family values at the heart of their lives, creating an environment filled with love, where their children were encouraged and supported in every possible way. As the youngest of four sisters, Gretchen was adored by her three older siblings, Zoe, Anne, and Jessica. They grew up under the loving care of their parents, sharing countless precious childhood memories. The Harringtons' modest home on Lawrence Road was always filled with laughter. Afternoons spent playing in the yard, exploring the woods together, or strolling down to Darby Creek, a small stream behind their house, were central to their family life. For the Harringtons, Marple Township wasn't just where they lived. It was a peaceful haven where everyone in the community treated each other like family. Gretchen's father, Reverend Harold Harrington, was a devout minister deeply committed to his faith. For years, he served tirelessly at congregations under the Reformed Presbyterian Church of North America. To him, there was nothing more important than spreading values of compassion, integrity, and faith. Gretchen's mother, Ina, was not only a skilled homemaker, but also a gentle and nurturing figure who cared for her family wholeheartedly. In this loving home, Gretchen grew up as a curious, joyful child with a bright spirit, eager to explore the world. A fateful summer morning. On the morning of August 15, 1975, sunlight streamed across the tree-lined streets of Marple Township. It was a beautiful day, and 8-year-old Gretchen woke up with excitement. She was eager to attend Vacation Bible School, a summer program held at the Trinity Church Chapel, just half a mile from her home. This was an activity she loved dearly, and she prided herself on never missing a day. Her father, Reverend Harold, encouraged her to continue attending to maintain her perfect attendance record. Usually, Gretchen would walk to the church with her sisters, Zoe and Harriet. However, on that particular day, her mother was preoccupied caring for their newborn sibling, and her sisters opted to stay home to help. Thus, Gretchen left the house alone, carrying her Bible in one hand. Her father stood at the door, waving goodbye as she set off on the familiar route along Lawrence Road. In the 1970s, it was not unusual for children to walk alone in Marple Township. Kids played outdoors until dusk without much concern. They roamed the woods, swam in Darby Creek, or walked to friends' houses nearby. Safety was seen as a given, and the community had never faced a threat serious enough to warrant worry. Rising worries. By 10 a.m., other children had already arrived at Vacation Bible School and had begun their morning activities. However, Gretchen was nowhere to be seen. This absence immediately raised concern for her father, Reverend Harold Harrington. At first, he thought she might have been delayed or taken a different route. He drove along Lawrence Road, searching the familiar paths his daughter would have taken. But there was no trace of Gretchen. His unease grew, and he reached out to Margaret Zanstra, the wife of Reverend David Zanstra, who oversaw the Vacation Bible School program at Trinity Church Chapel. Margaret confirmed that Gretchen had not arrived at the church that morning. At 11:23 a.m., Reverend Zanstra called the Marple Township Police Department to report Gretchen missing. He described her in detail, an 8-year-old girl with blonde hair tied in high pigtails, standing about 3 feet 6 inches tall, weighing 50 pounds and wearing a white shirt with dark blue shorts. Despite the detailed description, the initial search yielded no results, leaving everyone more desperate for answers. A community in panic. News of Gretchen's disappearance spread quickly, sending shockwaves through Marple Township. A community once known for its safety and serenity now found itself gripped by fear and uncertainty. Parents became overly protective of their children, forbidding them from going outside alone. Some families even imposed stricter security measures in their homes. Karen Frank Zetterberg, a classmate of Gretchen's at Vacation Bible School, recalled how her mother had taken her to a salon to have her long hair cut short, hoping to make her less noticeable to potential predators. Karen was also no longer allowed to walk alone to her piano lessons or swimming club, as she used to. Meanwhile, search efforts expanded. Hundreds of local volunteers joined forces with the police and a Pennsylvania State Police helicopter, scouring every hill, forest, and the waters of Darby Creek. Friends and family distributed flyers throughout the community featuring Gretchen's photograph, a sweet, gap-toothed smile captured in her most recent school picture. Yet despite their determined efforts, no clues emerged regarding Gretchen's whereabouts. Hope fades. As the sun set that evening, a somber atmosphere enveloped Marple Township. Margaret Zanstra, Reverend Zanstra's wife, brought dinner to the Harringtons' home, hoping to offer comfort. But Gretchen's mother, Ina, seemed resigned to an unspeakable truth. She calmly remarked that she might never see her daughter alive again. Her words, spoken with quiet anguish, felt like a dagger to everyone present. Even so, search teams refused to give up, clinging to the hope that some miracle might still occur. Yet as the days passed, hope began to wane, leaving only silence and despair in its wake. Lasting consequences. Gretchen's disappearance was not just a personal tragedy for the Harrington family. It was a seismic event that shattered the collective sense of security in Marple Township. It marked the end of an era when children could roam freely and parents could trust that their community would keep them safe. For years, Gretchen's story lingered in the hearts and minds of the townspeople, a painful reminder that even the safest places could harbor unseen dangers. The Harrington family's grief never subsided. They carried the weight of losing their youngest daughter, whose bright smile and loving heart had left an indelible mark on their lives. Gretchen's memory remained vivid, yet it was accompanied by a haunting question that would never be answered. What truly happened on that fateful summer morning? Her story is more than just a tragedy. It is a poignant reminder of the fragile balance between safety and vulnerability in our lives. It underscores the importance of vigilance and community awareness, even in places where serenity and trust seem unshakable. The search for answers. In the days following Gretchen Harrington's disappearance, the search efforts were intense but ultimately fruitless. We were searching for something, anything, a volunteer later recalled, but we found nothing. By Sunday, August 17, 1975, just 2 days after Gretchen vanished, the police made the difficult decision to call off the large-scale search. Investigators were at a standstill, unable to gather substantial leads. The police chief admitted to a local newspaper, "We have no clues." No useful evidence had been uncovered by the search teams. Frustration mounted as investigators tried to piece together what had happened to Gretchen. Over the following weeks, police interviewed a wide range of individuals, including witnesses, camp staff, students, and parents, hoping to reconstruct her final movements. These conversations provided crucial information for the investigation. One of the key pieces of information came from witnesses who reported seeing a green station wagon or a dark-colored convertible Cadillac parked near the church, speaking with a young girl. Another detail that raised suspicion was an unusual break in the daily schedule of the Vacation Bible School. On the morning of August 15th, the group at Trinity Church had stayed much longer than usual, about 45 to 50 minutes. This deviation from the routine suggested that something unusual might have occurred during that time. A turn in the investigation. The investigation took a significant turn on August 19th, when a small pair of shorts was found hanging on a fence post in Westchester, Pennsylvania. The discovery drew immediate attention. Investigators summoned Reverend David Zanstra for questioning. Their suspicions stemmed from a troubling fact. Zanstra had given an oddly specific description of the shorts Gretchen had been wearing, despite claiming he had never seen her on the day of her disappearance. According to Zanstra, Gretchen had never arrived at the camp that morning. The shorts found in Westchester, however, were ultimately determined not to belong to Gretchen. Yet doubts lingered. Investigators continued to question how Zanstra could have provided such detailed information about her clothing if he had not seen her that day. When detectives interviewed Zanstra again on August 19, he reiterated his claim that he had not encountered Gretchen that morning. He admitted to picking up and transporting several children to church on the day she disappeared, but firmly denied having seen her. This inconsistency deepened the suspicion surrounding him. A grim discovery. Nearly 2 months later, on October 14, 1975, the case took a tragic and devastating turn. A jogger in Ridley Creek State Park, located approximately 20 minutes from the Harringtons' home, stumbled upon human remains. At first, the jogger was unsure of what he had found, but when he looked closer, he noticed something unmistakable: a fingernail. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he immediately ran to find a park ranger. When authorities arrived at the scene, they discovered skeletal remains along with a set of clothing. Tragically, the clothing matched the outfit Gretchen had been wearing the day she disappeared. Her parents, Reverend Harold and Ina Harrington, were called in to confirm the identification. Overwhelmed with grief, they recognized the distinct pieces of clothing, confirming that the remains belonged to their beloved daughter. Lingering questions. The discovery of Gretchen's remains brought some closure to the question of her fate, but it left many others unanswered. What had happened to her during those agonizing hours between her departure from home and her tragic end in Ridley Creek State Park? Who was responsible and why? The inconsistencies in Reverend Zanstra's statements continued to cast a shadow of doubt. Despite his denial of seeing Gretchen that day, his specific knowledge of her clothing and other small details raised suspicions. Investigators struggled to reconcile his claims with the available evidence, but no concrete proof linked him or anyone else to the crime. A community forever changed. The discovery of Gretchen's remains shattered any lingering hopes in the Harrington household and across Marple Township. A once safe community now faced the harrowing reality that evil could strike even in the most unsuspecting of places. Parents became more protective, children were no longer allowed to walk freely, and the collective sense of security was irrevocably broken. For the Harrington family, the grief of losing Gretchen was compounded by the mystery that surrounded her death. The questions of who, how, and why haunted them for years. Though they found strength in their faith, the loss of their youngest daughter left a void that could never be filled. Gretchen's case remained unsolved, a chilling reminder of the vulnerability of innocence and the fragility of life. Even decades later, her story continues to resonate, a call for vigilance, justice, and the enduring search for answers. The tragic unfolding of Gretchen Harrington's case. Gretchen Harrington's remains, found in Ridley Creek State Park, brought heartbreak to her family and the Marple Township community. Her body was identified using dental records, and Dr. Halbert Filling, who conducted the autopsy, revealed that Gretchen suffered blunt force trauma to the head. The autopsy confirmed that she had been struck at least twice, causing fractures to her skull. Though there was suspicion she may have been assaulted, no evidence supported this claim. The tragic discovery left the community grieving the loss of a promising young life. A father's response and a renewed investigation. On the Sunday following the discovery of Gretchen's body, her father, Reverend Harold Harrington, delivered a sermon to his congregation. With a heavy heart, he spoke of Gretchen's simple faith in Christ, declaring that she was now free, while the person responsible for her death remained bound by their terrible actions. He reflected on a world filled with indescribable evil caused by human cruelty, urging those with knowledge of the truth to confront it. The discovery of Gretchen's remains triggered a flurry of new activity in the investigation. Witnesses came forward with reports of various men seen near the area where her body was found. Police received numerous tips, some promising, others entirely baseless. Investigators re-interviewed David Zanstra, a local minister who had given conflicting statements during the initial investigation. On October 30, 1975, Zanstra was summoned to the police station for further questioning. Zanstra's statements and the search for leads. In his statement, Zanstra told investigators that on the morning of August 15th, he had started picking up children for the Bible school opening session at 9:10 a.m. and returned to the Trinity Chapel by 9:30 a.m. He denied ever seeing Gretchen that day and claimed he did not know she was missing until Reverend Harold Harrington called him at the Reformed Church at 11:05 a.m. Investigators explored a range of potential suspects, including known offenders living in the area, but none of the leads resulted in arrests. What had truly happened to Gretchen Harrington remained a mystery for decades, leaving her murder unsolved and the case to grow cold. The long shadow of Gretchen's death. For those who grew up in Marple Township, Gretchen's murder left an indelible mark. One of them was Joanna Falcon Sullivan, who was just 9 years old in 1975 when the tragedy occurred. Born and raised in Broomall, Delaware County, Sullivan found the case haunting. As an adult, she became a veteran journalist and eventually wrote a book on true crime that detailed the ongoing investigation into Gretchen's case. Sullivan remarked, "I've wanted to write this story for decades. I grew up in Broomall, and my co-author, Mike Mathis, also grew up in Broomall, in Lawrence Park, where the case unfolded. It affected both of us as children, and it impacted so many kids our age." Sullivan's book, Marple's Tragedy, The Story of Gretchen Harrington, was released in October 2022 during the COVID-19 pandemic. While it was her first book, Sullivan stated that she planned to revise it to include any future developments in the case. A new witness and unsolved mysteries. As years passed, the unsolved case shifted hands as detectives retired or passed away. Sergeant Coffin became the lead investigator when a woman reached out to Marple police with new information about Gretchen's case. Her message was forwarded to Coffin's voicemail. In the message, the woman claimed she believed she knew who was responsible for what had happened to Gretchen. She referenced a failed abduction attempt around the same time as Gretchen's disappearance and mentioned keeping a journal during the 1970s when she was just a 10-year-old girl living in Havertown, about 3 miles east of Marple. Despite the passage of nearly 50 years, the woman's voice trembled as she recounted her memories. Coffin contacted the Pennsylvania State Police for assistance, as jurisdiction technically fell to them after Gretchen's remains were found in a state park. He noted, "The state police have far more resources than we do." The Pennsylvania State Police scheduled an interview with the woman, identified in court documents only by her initials, SF, a term used for confidential informants. A critical interview in 2023. The interview, conducted on January 2, 2023, became a pivotal moment in the decades-old case. The woman revealed that she had been a childhood friend of both Gretchen and her sister Zoe Harrington. She was also acquainted with David Zanstra and his family, particularly his daughter Mara. During the interview, the woman recounted a chilling statement made by Mara years earlier. "He does that sometimes. Sometimes I hear my sister crying in the middle of the night." This shocking revelation added a new layer to the investigation. While the case had languished for decades, this testimony breathed new life into the pursuit of justice for Gretchen Harrington. Lingering questions and hope for closure. Despite years of painstaking investigation, Gretchen's case remains one of heartbreak and unanswered questions. Who was responsible for her murder? What truly happened on that fateful August morning? Though the Harrington family sought solace in their faith, the loss of Gretchen left an emptiness that could never be filled. The case continues to haunt those who knew Gretchen and the many who grew up in the shadow of her tragic death. With renewed efforts by investigators and the bravery of witnesses coming forward after decades, there remains hope that one day the person responsible for taking Gretchen's life will be brought to justice. Until then, Gretchen Harrington's story endures as both a heartbreaking reminder of the fragility of life and a call for persistence in the face of unanswered truths. The Gretchen Harrington case, a lifetime of questions, a moment of justice. For 48 long years, the disappearance and murder of Gretchen Harrington haunted the small town of Broomall, Pennsylvania. Her story became an enduring symbol of loss and unanswered questions for an entire generation. In July 2023, a confession from a man who had evaded justice for decades finally brought the case to a resolution, though it also deepened the wounds of a community forever changed by Gretchen's untimely death. A community shattered. Before August 15, 1975, Marple Township was seen as a quintessential suburban haven. Its tree-lined streets and close-knit neighborhoods epitomized safety. Children walked freely to school, played outside until dark, and roamed the wooded parks without a care. Families, including the Harringtons, trusted their community implicitly. That trust was broken the day Gretchen disappeared. Gretchen was just 8 years old, the youngest of 4 sisters, with a radiant smile and a loving nature. Her father, Reverend Harold Harrington, and her mother, Ina, had raised their daughters with a strong sense of faith, kindness, and family values. Harold served as the pastor at a local church, while Ina poured her heart into raising their children, even hand-sewing their clothes. On the morning of August 15, 1975, Gretchen left her home carrying her Bible. She was headed to Vacation Bible School at Trinity Church Chapel, just half a mile away. Normally, Gretchen walked with her sisters, but on that day, she made the journey alone. It was a decision no one could have anticipated would end so tragically. The investigation begins. When Gretchen failed to arrive at the Bible school that morning, alarm bells began ringing. Her father, Reverend Harrington, quickly searched the familiar paths she would have taken. By midday, police had been alerted, and a large-scale search was launched. Hundreds of volunteers scoured the woods, including Ridley Creek State Park, for any sign of the missing girl. Flyers bearing Gretchen's photograph were distributed throughout the community. Despite the intense efforts, no immediate clues were found. Witnesses reported seeing Gretchen speaking to someone inside a vehicle near the church that morning, but descriptions of the car varied. Some claimed it was a green station wagon, others a dark-colored Cadillac convertible. One detail stood out. The car matched the description of a vehicle linked to Reverend David Zanstra, a pastor and family acquaintance. Zanstra, who had been a trusted figure in the community, told police he had not seen Gretchen that day. He claimed he was busy transporting children to the Bible school and only learned of her disappearance hours later. His detailed account of his movements that morning seemed convincing, and no evidence directly tied him to the crime. For the time being, the case went cold. The discovery of Gretchen's body, 2 months after Gretchen vanished on October 14, 1975, a jogger in Ridley Creek State Park stumbled upon skeletal remains. At first, the jogger wasn't sure what he had found. Then he noticed a small fingernail protruding from the soil. Horrified, he immediately alerted authorities. Police confirmed the remains were those of a child, and clothing found at the scene matched what Gretchen had been wearing on the day she disappeared. Her parents, Harold and Ina, were called to identify the clothing. Despite the unimaginable grief, they confirmed it belonged to their daughter. Dental records were used to definitively identify the remains as Gretchen's. The autopsy revealed she had suffered blunt force trauma to the head, with at least 2 significant blows fracturing her skull. The injuries were consistent with being struck by a heavy object, though no weapon was found. Investigators suspected she may have been sexually assaulted, but no evidence confirmed this. The discovery brought an end to the search, but left the community reeling. Reverend Harrington delivered a heartbreaking sermon the Sunday after Gretchen's remains were found. With her simple faith in Christ, he said, Gretchen is free, but her killer remains terribly bound. He lamented the presence of unimaginable evil in the world, urging those with knowledge of the truth to come forward. Suspicion falls on David Zanstra. While police continued to investigate, attention again turned to David Zanstra. Witnesses had reported seeing Gretchen near a car resembling his, and inconsistencies in his accounts raised suspicions. Zanstra claimed he had been busy with Bible school duties on the morning of her disappearance and denied ever seeing Gretchen that day. However, investigators noted a troubling detail. Zanstra had provided a strikingly accurate description of Gretchen's clothing, despite insisting he hadn't seen her. Further complicating matters was Zanstra's abrupt move to Plano, Texas, shortly after Gretchen's death. At the time, no evidence linked him directly to the crime, and the case stalled. Over the years, new leads emerged but failed to provide breakthroughs. Witnesses recalled disturbing behavior from Zanstra, including allegations that he had abused his own children and other young girls. Yet the connection to Gretchen's murder remained elusive. A breakthrough decades later. In 2023, nearly 5 decades after Gretchen's murder, a new witness came forward with crucial information. A woman who had been friends with Gretchen and her sister Zoe during childhood contacted police, sharing journal entries she had written as a 10-year-old in the 1970s. The entries detailed unsettling memories involving Zanstra, including comments from his own daughter about hearing her sister crying at night. On July 17, 2023, David Zanstra, now 83 years old and still working as a pastor in Georgia, was interrogated once again. Confronted with the new allegations and his long history of abuse, Zanstra finally confessed to killing Gretchen Harrington. According to Delaware County District Attorney Jack Stolzheimer, Zanstra admitted to luring Gretchen into his car under the pretense of giving her a ride to Bible school. Instead, he drove her to a remote location in Ridley Creek State Park, where he struck her and left her to die. Justice begins to take shape. Zanstra was arrested and charged with Gretchen's murder. He was taken into custody in Cobb County, Georgia, and denied bail. DNA samples were collected to determine if he could be linked to other unsolved cases across the country. District Attorney Stolzheimer described Zanstra as every parent's worst nightmare and emphasized the profound impact his actions had on Gretchen's family and the community. Today, I can finally say that justice has been served. Stolzheimer announced. This case may have taken nearly 50 years to resolve, but the persistence and dedication of investigators have ensured that Gretchen's story will not be forgotten. Extradition and trial. Zanstra's extradition to Pennsylvania is underway, with the legal process expected to take several months. Once he arrives in Delaware County, prosecutors plan to pursue the case aggressively. "We will prosecute him. We will convict him," Stolzheimer vowed. "If you are someone who prays, you can pray for Gretchen, though she is in God's hands. Pray instead for the evil person responsible for this, for he will need it." A community reflects. For the people of Broomall, Gretchen's murder marked a turning point in their perception of safety. Once a symbol of innocence, the town was forever changed by the tragedy. "Before August 1975, this town was like any other in America," said Lieutenant Jonathan Sunderland of the Pennsylvania State Police. "What happened in those woods shattered that innocence. But justice knows no expiration date." The resolution of Gretchen's case is a testament to the power of persistence. Investigators never stopped pursuing the truth, even as decades passed and leads grew cold. The dedication of law enforcement, the Harrington family, and the community ensured that Gretchen's story would not fade into obscurity. A long-awaited closure. Though nothing can undo the pain of Gretchen's loss, her family and community can take solace in the fact that her killer has finally been held accountable. Her story serves as a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring strength of those who fight for justice. Gretchen Harrington's memory will live on, not just as a victim of a terrible crime, but as a symbol of hope and perseverance. A long-awaited reckoning. David Zanstra's arrest and its aftermath. David Zanstra's arrest in July 2023 for the murder of Gretchen Harrington sent shockwaves through both the Pennsylvania community where Gretchen lived and the broader network of churches where Zanstra had served as a pastor. Between 1965 and 2005, Zanstra held positions at Reformed Christian churches across New Jersey, California, Texas, and Pennsylvania, leaving behind a trail of congregations that now grapple with the unsettling truth. A trusted religious leader was capable of such heinous acts. The church's response. The Reformed Church in America released a statement on Monday addressing Zanstra's arrest. "We extend our deepest condolences to the family of Gretchen Harrington," the church declared. "We are grieved to learn that a CRC pastor has been implicated in this case. We acknowledge that we live in a broken and sinful world where violence can strike anywhere, perpetrated by anyone." The statement struck a somber tone, reflecting on the profound betrayal of trust Zanstra represented. To his community, Zanstra had been more than a pastor. He was a respected figure, a husband, and a father to young daughters. His wife had even brought dinner to the Harrington family in the days following Gretchen's disappearance. A chilling detail now that Zanstra has confessed to killing their little girl. A community reflects on betrayal. For those who knew Zanstra, the revelation of his guilt was deeply unsettling. Karen Frank Zetterberg, a classmate of Gretchen's at Bible school, expressed the disbelief many felt. "At the time, everyone was surprised to learn Gretchen got into a car with a stranger. And now to find out it wasn't a stranger, it was someone we trusted. It's horrifying," she said. Zetterberg had interviewed Zanstra, his wife, and his daughter while researching her book on Gretchen's case. Zanstra had a vague recollection of the day Gretchen disappeared. She recalled, "There was a pervasive sense of fear and anxiety in Broomall. I still remember seeing helicopters flying over our neighborhood as they searched for her. That image has stayed with me my entire life." Shock from Zanstra's neighbors. In Georgia, where Zanstra had lived since leaving Pennsylvania, his arrest stunned his neighbors. Many described him as a quiet, kind man. "It's shocking. I didn't know," said Karen Halsdorf, a neighbor. "They were always such nice people." Aaron Christian, another neighbor, shared his own disbelief. "He seemed friendly. I talked to him a few times. He used to walk around with his cane. It's hard to imagine him being involved in something like this." These sentiments mirrored the dissonance many felt. How could a man who presented himself as a pillar of his community harbor such darkness? The answer underscored the painful truth that predators often hide in plain sight. The Harrington family's statement. Following Zanstra's arrest, the Harrington family issued a public statement reflecting on the emotional toll of the past 5 decades. We are deeply hopeful that the person responsible for this heinous crime, committed when Gretchen was just 8 years old, will finally face justice, the family said. Gretchen's kidnapping and death changed our family forever, and we miss her every single day. We are grateful for the relentless pursuit of justice by law enforcement, especially the Pennsylvania State Police, who never stop searching for answers. We would not be here today without their unwavering dedication. The family also requested privacy as they processed the news of Zanstra's confession and arrest. Their gratitude to investigators was tempered by the enduring pain of losing Gretchen. She had an impact on everyone around her, they added. Her loss has been felt for a lifetime, encouraging others to come forward. As news of Zanstra's crime spread, authorities urged anyone who may have been victimized by him to step forward. The Delaware County District Attorney's Office and the Pennsylvania State Police emphasized that they are committed to pursuing justice for other potential victims. If David Zanstra ever acted against you, please contact us, the police statement read. We will listen. We will act. Given Zanstra's history of serving at churches across multiple states, investigators believe there may be additional victims. The disturbing revelation that Zanstra abused his own children and others within his community reinforces this concern. A community forever changed. The kidnapping and murder of Gretchen Harrington transformed the town of Broomall, Pennsylvania. Before August 15, 1975, Marple Township was a typical American suburb where parents felt confident letting their children walk to school or play outside unsupervised. Gretchen's death shattered that sense of security. This case destroyed our innocence, said Lieutenant Jonathan Sunderland of the Pennsylvania State Police. It fundamentally changed how we viewed our community and each other. But justice knows no expiration date. Whether a crime happened 5 minutes ago or 50 years ago, law enforcement will pursue it with the same commitment. Persistence in the face of time. The arrest and confession of David Zanstra highlight the power of persistence in pursuing justice. The investigation remained active for decades, passing through the hands of multiple detectives and agencies. Though leads were scarce at times, the dedication of law enforcement ensured that Gretchen's case was never forgotten. District Attorney Jack Stahlsteimer praised the collaboration between local, state, and federal agencies that brought the case to resolution. This moment is a testament to the strength of persistence, he said. It proves that justice is always worth fighting for, no matter how much time has passed. A symbol of hope and closure. For nearly 50 years, Gretchen Harrington's murder loomed over her family, her community, and the broader Marple Township area. The arrest of David Zanstra marks the beginning of a long overdue chapter of accountability. While it cannot erase the pain of losing Gretchen, it offers a measure of closure to those who loved her and a sense of validation to a community that refused to let her memory fade. In the words of Gretchen's family, we miss her every day, but today we take solace in knowing that the pursuit of justice for Gretchen has prevailed. She will never be forgotten.